My name is Eugene Hoover. I'm a wealth advisor, and today we're going to be talking about the Fed pivot. The Fed pivot, also known as the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates, is going to affect not only your portfolio, but also your life and the economy. So my goal is to educate you on the pivot and also the actions you should take before it happens. As it currently stands, the market has put a probability of 100% of not only a rate cut this year, but a rate cut in September. What that tells us is very likely the Fed is going to start lowering rates. As it currently stands, the rate sits at a 5.5%. So the question is, what is going to happen to your portfolio when these rates start being lowered? Well, let's start by educating ourselves on the yield curve. The yield curve essentially shows us what the interest rate is depending on what the maturity of the bond, note, or bill is. On the shorter and beginning of the curve, these are your bills. Essentially, this shows you that your very short maturity debt instruments, it shows you the interest rate that they have. And so these interest rates, as you can see, they're around 5%. And this is concurrent with your money market funds as well as your savings accounts. And this makes sense because savings accounts and money market funds, they actually tend to be low, short maturity, low duration bills. And so if they're buying, for example, 3-month bills, that makes sense why their interest rates and what they're giving you for holding that security, whether it's the money market fund or the savings account, why those rates are approximately 5%. So if the Federal Reserve is lowering rates, what it means is, for one, it means that those rates are going to start coming down. So cash is no longer going to be as advantageous as they have been because those rates that you're receiving are going to start being lowered. So then the next question is, what about the bonds in your accounts? Well, if you own any bonds, you'll notice that the bond prices will go up while the yield on those bonds will go down. As we know, bond price is inverse of interest rates. And so as you can see in this graph, and there's generally tends to be a lag, right? It's not a perfect inverse, but generally, as interest rates go up, bond prices go down. And on the opposite, as bond prices go up, interest rates tend to go down. What this means is, if you want to lock in your yield, lock in your rates that you're receiving on your bonds, or if you're simply looking for price appreciation on bonds, the interest rates being lowered will be advantageous for you. The other thing with lowering interest rates is borrowing rates follow the interest rate curves. While they're not the exact same, an interest rate of 5% doesn't mean you can borrow at 5%. Generally, these curves move together. So if interest rates are coming down, the price to borrow is also coming down. If you've been stuck and not being able to afford a mortgage, there's a chance now as the Fed lowers, and that then makes your borrowing rate less, which then makes your mortgage less, that you'll actually now be able to buy that house or that car or whatever other product you've been wanting to buy. So borrowing rates will be lower. An important thing to note, however, is the Federal Reserve, one of their mandates is to keep the economy strong. The reason the Fed raised rates initially is because the economy was running too hot, inflation. That means the economy was doing very, very well. But now the Fed is lowering. And what that means is the Fed is reducing their tightening. And so if they're beginning to tighten less or ease, it means the economy is slowing down. And if the economy is slowing down, that means it is a great time to reevaluate, one, what your emergency fund is. Do you have enough money in case of an emergency, right? If the chances of a recession are much higher now than they have been in the past, it's a good time to make sure you have cash and ample cash in reserve. The other thing is I've seen a lot of prospects come in recently that have very aggressive portfolios. And these portfolios can be made up of real estate, stocks, bonds, etc. But it's a great time to reevaluate and make sure you're not taking more risk than you need to. Let's make sure your portfolio is not going to be wiped out. And as you can see in this graph, which has been up for a little while now, you can see that as interest rates tend to go down, it's because the Fed is trying to ease the economy, is trying to ease borrowing. And in easing borrowing, they're hoping to reignite the economy and get rid of low performance. And so you see the inverse here, where the economy heats up when interest rates are low, and you have that big period in between 2020 and 2022 where interest rates were basically zero. And frankly, that's been historically for the last 10 years or so, rates have been very low. But you can see between 2020 and 2022, very low interest rates. And don't forget that a lot of money was pushed into the system. And so you can see that the economy actually heated up. And then as money stopped being introduced into the economy, in addition to interest rates being raised, the economy slowed down. Those are the things to keep in mind, and I hope you got a lot of value out of this video.